This episode of Planted is brought to you by Yorma's Choice.
The Radio Misfits Podcast Network.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Planted with Sara podcast. I'm Sara, your host, and today we welcome back Dr. Amanda Reiman. She is a social ethnobotanist, Chief Knowledge Officer at New Frontier Data, and is also the founder of Personal Plants, which is a platform developed to help people develop healthy, balanced relationships with psychoactive plants. Welcome back, Amanda. It's so good to see you.
Oh, it's so fabulous to be back. Always a pleasure.
Now, we talked about what we were going to discuss today, and I think that this is something that's really interesting, and I think it's on a lot of people's minds. As we're getting into legalization and normalization, now we're actually taking a step back and looking at our consumption and mindful consumption. And so today, we're going to talk a little bit. Well, first, let's talk about what you've been doing, because you took a cannabis break.
I did. It's definitely not my first, but it has been my longest. Last year, I took a month off at the beginning of the year, really just to reset my tolerance. I always was known as kind of this woman that had an unbelievable tolerance, and it was kind of part of my identity that, Amanda can smoke anyone under the table. I felt like I had never had to limit myself. I never had to think, oh, will this send me over the edge, or should I have this edible? I could just handle whatever amount of THC was in me. And then when I got into my 40s, things started to change. Things change when you get a little bit older. And one of those changes has to do with metabolism and how things affect us. So I found that not only did my cannabis tolerance start to be variable, but the outcome was unpredictable. And doses that before I wouldn't blink an eye at, and I'd be off, on the bike or at the gym or teaching a class, now started to give me a little bit of anxiety. I got kind of that overwhelmed feeling. And so I felt, I don't know anymore how much I can use and still feel okay. And so I thought, well, I really need to kind of figure this out. And I'm someone who's already prone to anxiety. So having something in my life that was going to give me unpredictable anxiety was not something that I desired. So last year I took a month off. It was really interesting. I did have some withdrawals from the THC, which we can talk about, which is really more your endocannabinoid system kind of sluggishly kicking back into gear after not having a whole lot to do for so long. And I had all of these barriers and boundaries around my use patterns when I went back to it. I stopped smoking. I was only going to dry flower vape. I was only going to do it after 3:00 in the afternoon. I was going to take at least 2 hours in between sessions. And that went great for a few months. And then I started to feel old patterns kind of creep back in. It was like, well, it's Saturday, so I'm going to use it, 10 in the morning. Or, I know I just had, a vape an hour ago, but it's the weekend or it's the evening and I'm going to do it again. And I slowly started to see my patterns return. And so this year I decided to take a longer break of 3 months because I figured that was really going to give me time to really separate myself from the behavior. And so I did actually took a 3.5 month break from January to late April. And during that time, I started to realize I feel good. Like, I feel really good, like I'm sleeping really well. My dreams are back, which is something I really missed when I was using a lot of cannabis. I didn't have to spend a lot of time making sure I had cannabis. Like it used to be when I was going to travel, it was like, all right, do I have my cannabis? Where can I use it? Can I use it in the hotel? If not, I got to find a place where I can use it. And even during the day, it was like, when am I going to get those breaks in? When am I going to go buy it? How much do I have left? Do I need to get more? And just not having that at all was a bit freeing. And I felt like my mood was good. I felt like my appetite was regular and I wasn't getting the munchies and I wasn't having to fight those kind of late night food cravings. And then at the end of April, I ate a gummy. I ate a 5 milligram gummy on 420 with my mom.
I was going to ask if it was 420.
It was 420. If there's a day,
right?
Right. I enjoyed it. we giggled, we got the munchies, we had really good food. My partner had cooked an amazing dinner. We were sitting out on the deck. It was a beautiful day. And I was like, this is really lovely. And then the second thought I had is, I don't want to feel like this all the time. Like, I'm enjoying this, but I don't feel like this needs to be my normal state of being, because it was elevated, right? It was like normal state of being, oh, elevated state of being, back to normal state of being. And I didn't feel like I had to stay elevated, because that takes a lot of work. And when you don't stay elevated, you get tired. And I was tired of feeling tired at like 3 PM after consuming all day, and then having to consume more just to keep myself from being tired. Like, it was a lot of work. And now I have sustained energy throughout the day. And if I want to have that little elevation, I can feel the elevation, and then I can feel the come down. And I have to admit, I was a multiple times a day consumer for 27 years. And this is the healthiest my relationship with cannabis has ever been. Now, I know there's people out there listening that are like, oh man, she's totally turning. She's becoming a prohibitionist. She's buying into the hype. And I want to be clear, cannabis is amazing. I love cannabis. It is a fantastic plant. It has so much value. It can help so many people. And compared to a lot of other therapeutic tools out there, it has very few risks and a whole lot of benefits. But I also think that, just like all consumption, it is important to be mindful. It is important to have intention, and it is important to explore the motivations for consumption, because just like anything else, you can overconsume cannabis, you can use it mindlessly, you can develop habits.
Yep.
And so I'm really about people taking an honest look at their own consumption and how that fits into what they want their life to be like.
There's such thing as too much of a good thing. And, as human beings, we're constantly subconsciously striving for homeostasis, and we don't always get it right. I mean, I totally hear what you're saying. And working in a dispensary for so many years, I saw a lot of people that would come in and their tolerance would go up and up and up, and they'd be like, this is getting really expensive. And I would say, well, it might be time to have a moment to just kind of sit back and reflect. And I think we all need to do that. It's not a, you've done something wrong or blah, 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 blah. It's just, as human beings, especially when we enjoy something, it's like we want to make the most of it. And then sometimes we're like, oh, wait, maybe I jumped the shark on that. Like, let's pull it back. I totally get what you're saying, because for me, I used to consume a lot more. When I was younger, I used to consume a lot. And then I took a long break, and I was amazed at the differences in my body. But I was also, because I was younger, I was a teenager, it also impacted my social life, which was a little bit hard because, kids. And now it's like, I found, and I think especially like during the pandemic, where I think a lot of people were turning to help for anxiety and feeling blue, that was when I was home all the time. That's when I was kind of like, well, I think I need to create a structure around my usage, because, I do get anxious. And so I started, I've always, since I've worked in a dispensary, been interested in the non-euphoric. So for myself, for like getting my mind in order, and when I have, things like procrastination or what have you that kind of turn into anxiety, I turn to non-euphorics like CBG. And then in the evenings, I'll save my THC usage. And, like you said, it's like everybody's different. But one thing that I've noticed is you've been having the conversations online. It seems like there are a lot of people really interested in exploring the experience that you've had. Now you've started to kind of create a container for people to delve into that for themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was really fascinating, because I don't know how people are going to react, because of prohibition and because of all of the mistruths about cannabis that have been spread around. People get very defensive. And I get that, right? And it's kind of like, if you're not saying cannabis is good all the time for everyone, you're saying it's never good for anyone. Like those are the kind of the two dichotomies that we've been forced into, right? Like the two buckets. And so I was like, well, let's start a conversation about loving cannabis and thinking it should be legal and thinking it should be accessible and thinking it has benefits, but also being really aware that, like you said, there can be too much of a good thing. And as humans, we have a tendency to find something we like, and then we just ride it until the wheels come off.
Yep.
Right. And we also, as human beings, like to avoid uncomfortable feelings. Like our brains do not like to sit in discomfort. And I think social media takes complete advantage of that and understands what it needs to feed our brains in order to alleviate that discomfort, and calls to us. And people just spend a lot of time using that as a tool to alleviate discomfort. I think food and other things are also out there that help us alleviate discomfort. And I think that in a lot of ways, cannabis is one of those things, right? I'm bored. I'm going to smoke some weed because it's going to make me feel not bored. I'm anxious. I'm disappointed in something. I've had a hard day. I mean, I do think that there's value in kind of sitting with discomfort and being okay, being uncomfortable or feeling bored, right? Like, I think that that's something we have to learn to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so part of having this conversation is like, why, what are you using cannabis for? Is it to enhance something? Is it to distract from something? And when I started having this conversation, I was so surprised. I wasn't really sure how people were going to respond or what they were going to say. But I was approached by so many people like you and me, right? People that have been in this for a long time, that have been advocates for the plant for a long time, that have had very intimate, regular relationships with the plant for a long time, that grow the plant, that sell the plant, that, you know, do marketing for the plant, that regulate the plant. I mean, people that are very hands-on with cannabis who said, you know, I've been thinking about this and I feel like my use has become more of a habit. Like I do it because it's something I do, not because it's something that I am like intentionally wanting to do. And I want to explore this. And so thinking about all of the different ways that people interact with cannabis and what change means, you know, traditional treatment programs, as my background is in substance use treatment, and traditional treatment programs take a very anti-drug stance. And that's even harm reduction. And what I mean by that is there's a view that this drug is causing you harm. And to alleviate the harm that this drug is causing you, you either need to stop that drug completely, you need to reduce your use of it, but it's all in the context of it's disrupting your life in some way. And so you need to change the way you're using it to get rid of that disruption. And to be honest, a lot of the people I've talked to, cannabis is not disrupting their life.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
They're going to work, they're excelling, they're working out, they're having great family relationships, they're consuming multiple times a day. They don't feel any negative physical effects from it. I mean, the smoking, you know, people talk about that definitely gives you some effects over some time. But, you know, these aren't folks that are coming to me and saying, you know, I lost my wife and my house and my dog and my job, and I need to do something because this is causing huge harm in my life. Like that is not the population I'm talking to. And so I don't think that the right approach for that population is a traditional treatment approach. And so that's why I'm calling my program Cannabis in Balance, because it comes from this perspective that cannabis is a benefit. Like cannabis is a net good for most people. But it's about balance. It's about figuring out how to balance that consumption, how to balance that method of ingestion, and how to literally investigate what you want your relationship with cannabis to be like, and what is it now? And what about the relationship now may not be serving you as much as it could be. And that's really resonated with people because, you know, when someone tells you to take a break from cannabis, people panic.
Yes, they do.
Right? They do. And they're like, I could never do that. Like, I could never stop using cannabis. And I'm like, okay, well, what if I told you you don't have to stop using cannabis? Just pay more attention to why you're using it, how you're feeling, what you're getting out of it. And is that method of consumption the healthiest method for you? What if we just did that, but you didn't change anything? that in and of itself could be value. And I think that's why people have responded positively to what I'm putting out there, because I'm not asking them to stop. And I'm not even asking them to reduce their use if they don't want to. I'm simply asking them to pay attention. And I call that mindful consumption, which is awareness without judgment. So be aware of what you're doing, but don't judge yourself for it, right? We get into this kind of pride, shame cycle of our own behavior where we're either being good or bad. And when we're being good, we reward ourselves. When we're being bad, we're hard on ourselves. But the reality is that there should be no judgment in your own behavior. You should just have awareness of what you're doing and why, and then deciding whether or not that's the right thing for you, but not judging yourself for having those feelings or having those behaviors.
Yeah, exactly. Well, the other year I had Peter Coyote on the show. And although he no longer uses cannabis, he had a wild story about his first time and like pounds of Mexican cannabis. But he, as a Buddhist priest, he was saying that, he believes in the medicinal use, but he feels that some people are using cannabis in lieu of their mindfulness practice, and that we should really be incorporating for more holistic health practices like meditation and being aware of our bodies. And, that for some, using cannabis is kind of a way of escape. And I can't say that I disagree with them. And I think that having these conversations also creates a more balanced conversation about policy. Because as you know, like a lot of our colleagues have very balanced views on cannabis, and some of our colleagues say it saves the world and it does everything and you should be using it all the time. And I'm not saying anything negative about them personally, but that viewpoint is what polarizes us with the people who are very much full of stigma and fearful of cannabis, or the Kevin Sabbats of the world. One of my favorite people, not. But, it's like I think like having these realistic conversations about the balance and really figuring out what works for you and what doesn't is also what ultimately throughout creates a healthier approach to cannabis, whether we're looking at personal use, policy, how to talk about it with your kids, what's available in dispensaries, because there is, there also is the point which is beyond what you're talking about, people who have balanced use and are getting on with their lives. There are people who do have unhealthy relationships with cannabis as well. And, we do look for escape, especially with the world the way it is right now. There's just so many things going on. People get frightened. People don't want to deal with things. But really, like, sitting and making friends with your fears and having like those moments of reflection and getting back in your body will help you much more than escaping through smoking a lot of weed.
Oh, absolutely. And, there are people that overexercise.
Yeah.
There are people that are told by their doctor, don't run anymore because you're really injuring yourself. And if you keep doing it, you're going to end up with chronic pain. And they do it anyway.
Right.
And we would look at that and say, wow, what perseverance, right? This person is so concerned about their health that they're going to keep doing something that even though they know that it could cause harm to them. And we look at exercise as a generally positive activity. And I think cannabis is very similar to that, right?
Yeah.
I think for a lot of people, cannabis is a generally positive activity that brings benefit into their lives. But there is a point where consumption may not be beneficial to you, when the method that you're choosing may not be beneficial to you, when the patterns of your consumption are not beneficial to you. And even though the activity is overall a beneficial activity, you could be using it in a way that is not as beneficial as it could be. And again, I think, going back to your point about kind of these two buckets of like all good or all bad, I mean, the prohibitionists started that narrative, right? Because for so long it was cannabis is terrible. It has no medical value. It's highly addictive. It's not good for anyone to use. It's so bad that we're going to arrest you and put you in jail because of your involvement with this plant. Like that was the narrative for a very long time. And when we started seeing more activism around cannabis starting in the 1960s and 70s, if there was a moment that an activist said, well, yeah, cannabis can be bad for some people, or some people might misuse it, the prohibitionists would take that and run with it. And then their narrative would be, see, even the activists say that it's not always good for you. So because they took the stance of all bad, in a lot of ways, they forced those that were advocating for change into the all good category.
Yep.
And so they could not show weakness, right? They could not admit that there were any negatives around cannabis because it was just going to be used by the other side. And I think we have to recognize that we have evolved past that point to where we can have conversations in the middle. And we can say that, yes, cannabis has a lot of benefits, but it's not without risk. Nothing is without risk. And so, you know, the Kevins out there and the DEA and the people that still want to maintain that position of cannabis is all good and all bad, they do not have public opinion on their side. The public opinion is that cannabis should not be criminalized, that people should have access to it for medical purposes. Pretty much everyone now at least knows one person that has benefited from the therapeutic use of cannabis. And like 75% of the country lives in a state that has some kind of legal access to cannabis. So we are in a space, no matter what the federal government says or what their stance is, we as a society are in a space where we can start having these nuanced conversations, right? We can walk into a dispensary and choose CBD or CBG instead of THC. We can walk in and say, I really want to find something that's more balanced. I don't want 30% THC. That probably isn't even 30% THC. You know, I want a more one-to-one THC CBD product because I don't need to be high all the time. Like, I feel like we're mature enough now as consumers, and the policy has evolved in a way that gives us that option. But we have to be willing to let go of kind of the subculture identity that was associated with using cannabis when it was illegal.
Discover the power of Yorma's Choice CBD products. When we chose a sober life, we searched for the best CBD to manage our chronic pain. In Raywood, Kentucky, the home of Bickett and Boone, we found the perfect solution. Yorma's Choice is a range of topicals, tinctures, bath salts, and gummies. Choose Yorma's Choice for pain-free living. Shop now at furpeaceranch.com. FURPEACERANCH.com.
Did you ever think we'd be having this conversation 10 years ago?
No, I'm like, what was 10 years ago, 2014? No, I'm really happy that we're having this conversation,
Right?
actually. And I think it shows how far we've come, even though it can be hard to see that sometimes because we're still dealing with federal prohibition and antiquated views about cannabis. But just the fact that I can walk into a dispensary and pick up a THC, CBD, CBG tincture and ask questions about it and use it legally and safely, like just that exists means that we have to up our game when it comes to having honest conversations about consumption.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. I've always been a big proponent of the reset. You know, I think I realized it when I was going to Michigan to visit my mother, and that was when you could go to jail for having resin in your pipe. So of course I didn't bring cannabis with me. And I would come home and I would have my first puff, and I was like, wow, after not having it for a couple weeks, I actually like feel this more and I enjoy it. And I'm more aware of like what my body's doing. And I really, really liked that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how, you know, for folks listening out there who are maybe thinking about doing this and they're like, oh, I couldn't give it up for a month, or I couldn't give it up for 3 months, a couple days. I mean, start slow, 24 hours. You know what I mean? Like tolerance drops pretty quickly when it comes to THC. So even if you stop for 48 hours, before I took my 3-month break last year, I would stop for 48 hours once a month. And it was just a way to keep things in check. And when I would go back after 48 hours, I would get really high after for that first consumption session. So it doesn't take a lot. So if you're out there and you're thinking, I would like, my tolerance has gotten really high. I don't really even feel like I'm getting high anymore. I just kind of feel like I'm maintaining. Try 24 hours.
Yep.
And it could be as simple as let yourself run out of cannabis and don't go get more for 24 hours. Because a lot of times if it's in your house, like, if I have cookies in my house, and I'm like, I'm not eating those cookies, but then they call to me. And then I'm rationalizing all the reasons why I deserve a cookie and I should have a cookie. So just keep it out of your house for 24 hours. Plan something so you're not thinking about it, and then go back to it. And then maybe the next month it's 48 hours. And then maybe you're ready to take a week off. So I do advocate for kind of easing into it, because again, it's not just about the tolerance and the regular use and the habit. It's part of the identity, right? Coming home and lighting up, or, on the weekend, going out somewhere, right, and bringing my weed and sitting in the grass and having some joints or whatever, that was part of who I was. That was my identity as a human being. And you have to kind of rethink that, right? And the analogy that I've been using is a high school athlete, right? So you have these high school athletes that started playing football when they were 5. Right. And they've been playing Pee Wee League, and then they play the Junior League and the Powder Puff League and all of these things. They get through junior high, they play football. In high school, they play football. And I mean, this is their identity. Their parents are wearing their gear and they have to go to 2-a-day practices, and every weekend it's a game, and every night it's practice, and they're eating special things. This is who they are as a person. Very few people after high school go on to play college ball, and even fewer go from college to professional. So there comes a point when that identity stops.
Yep.
There are no more games. There is no more practice. You aren't the football player. This is no longer part of your identity. And I used to work with a lot of student athletes when I was teaching at Berkeley. A lot of them were social welfare majors for reasons we could get into, but I had a lot of college athletes that were not going to play pro. And I saw depression. And I saw anxiety, and I saw kind of who am I now kind of feeling. And if you're somebody that has been a cannabis consumer for a long time, and your social events all revolve around cannabis, and your friend group revolves around cannabis, and the things you choose to go to are all things where you can consume cannabis, and when you travel, you always bring cannabis, and you work in the cannabis industry, it can very much be a part of your identity. And then not having that anymore is scary, right? It's anxiety provoking, right? It's who am I if I'm not this person that's associated with this plant? And so I get why that can be scary for people to think about, in addition to not having the habit and the ritual of using cannabis. But I will say, this is the first time I've not been a cannabis consumer since I was 20. And it's really been interesting to figure out who the hell I am.
Well,
parts of my personality that maybe haven't been there for 20 something years, because it was all kind of facilitated by consumption. And so it's been, and I'm also a middle-aged person now. So we're all thinking of this stuff, right? Who am I? And what is my role in the world? And so it's just been all around a very interesting exercise.
Looking to grow your cannabis business and expand your network? Join the National Association of Cannabis Businesses for just $50 a month and unlock exclusive access to new commercial opportunities and clients across the industry. Enjoy special discounts, free advertising, and access to members-only content. Whether you're starting out or scaling up, NACB tailors its memberships to propel you forward. Visit nacb.com now and join the leading community dedicated to cannabis business excellence.
I want to go back to something that you said earlier towards the top of the episode about the resetting of the endocannabinoid system and the things that you go through. For our listeners who may not be as well versed in how that works in our receptors, could you break that down a little bit so people understand what's happening and maybe know what they might expect?
Absolutely. So we all have an endocannabinoid system. It's similar to our nervous system. As you mentioned, our bodies like to stay in homeostasis, which is balance. And the endocannabinoid system helps with that. So we have receptors all throughout our bodies, concentrated in certain parts of the body, like our gut and our brains and our behind our eyes, that are endocannabinoid receptors, meaning that our bodies produce endocannabinoids, which are the same chemicals found in the plant. In the plant, we call them phytocannabinoids versus endocannabinoids. And so our body produces these chemicals. They travel through the body, they bind to the receptor sites, and they keep us in balance. So if we're running too hot or too cold, or there's inflammation going on, they help regulate things like sleep, appetite, sexual desire, mood. These things are regulated by the endocannabinoid system. So if our bodies are out of balance, we release cannabinoids that bind to receptors that help maintain this balance. The endocannabinoid anandamide, which was named after Ananda, which is the Sanskrit word for bliss, is kind of the THC version of our endocannabinoids. So when our bodies to regulate mood, if we're in pain, our bodies release anandamide, which binds to receptors and makes us feel better, elevates our mood, reduces our pain. And so this is a natural process. The endocannabinoid system is actually one of the very first body systems that's formed after egg fertilization. So it's a very integral part of our functioning. Now, when our endocannabinoid system doesn't have a lot to do, and it's usually very busy, right? Because we're always a system of balance and imbalance in our bodies, it gets a little lazy. And so when you are introducing a lot of phytocannabinoids into your body through the plant, the endocannabinoid system doesn't have as much work to do. So if you're always bringing THC into your body, your anandamide production may suffer because of that, right? Because why are you producing it if you don't need it, right? Our bodies are going to produce things that it needs in order to stay in balance. If you're bringing in all of these outside phytocannabinoids, over time, your endocannabinoid system can get a little sluggish. It's basically like putting its feet up. It's like, I'm here if you need me, but it seems like you got this handled. So what happens when you stop bringing phytocannabinoids into the body is it's not like, boom, your endocannabinoid system switches back on and is operating as normal. It takes a little while. It takes maybe a week or two for your system to be like, oh, okay, so wait, there's no THC. Okay, I got it. So there's no THC coming in. All right, anandamide, you're back on deck. I know you haven't worked in a while, but we're going to fire you up. We're going to start you working again. But again, this doesn't happen overnight. And so what we are commonly been told are cannabis withdrawals are really that lapse between phytocannabinoids and a working endocannabinoid system. And so when you think about what is commonly referred to as cannabis withdrawals, things like moodiness, trouble sleeping, lack of appetite, sometimes a little like muscle ache and joint pain, those are all the systems that are regulated by our endocannabinoid system. So your endocannabinoid system is working to get itself back together, to get those endocannabinoids back into your body. But again, it doesn't happen overnight. So if you are a longtime THC user, you may find when you stop THC use that you may have these feelings for about a week. You may have trouble sleeping. You may have much of an appetite. You may be kind of moody, in a bad mood. You may be like, oh man, I haven't had that knee pain for years. And now all of a sudden here it is. Or, I did my regular workout yesterday and my back is way more sore than it usually is. So you may have these experiences. Now, they're not dangerous. So there is no physical danger of having these. And they tend to be fairly mild. So they're not like withdrawals from alcohol or from opiates or from some of the other substances. So, it's just kind of like, no, it could happen. Be patient with yourself. If you have other practices like meditation or melatonin or other things that can help with sleep, maybe plan for that so that you have something to use. Know that you may not have a big appetite. So maybe plan to have some things in the house that you really like to eat that are going to really stimulate your appetite. Maybe have some ibuprofen on hand in case you have some issues with muscle aches or pains. Maybe take it easy in terms of physical exercise, knowing that you may be harder for you to recover, and know that it will pass. I think when I went through it, it took me like a week, and then everything was working normally. And this time when I took a break, I actually didn't have them at all.
Wow, that's cool.
Well, last year I was taking 48 hours off a month. So I was kind of keeping my endocannabinoid system at the ready.
Mm-hmm.
And I also had way reduced my use. So I was not likely replacing all of that activity with phytocannabinoids. But if you're somebody that's consuming multiple times a day, now another thing you can do is you can use CBD. So we talked about kind of the non-euphorics. Now CBD and THC bind to different receptors, a lot of different receptors in the body, but some of them there's overlap, like pain receptors, inflammation receptors, mood receptors. So you can use some CBD as a supplement to see if that can help kind of, moderate some of the withdrawals. But it's not terrible. And I will say, if you're someone who loves to dream, that is one of the best effects of not using THC, is dream activity. I mean, I went years where I would just have these very fragmented dreams. I wouldn't remember them. They weren't very vivid. And pretty much as soon as I stopped using THC, my dreams just came back with abundance. I had a dream I was smoking a joint with Kamala Harris the other day, and I can still see it in my brain. We were sitting in the grass at some big event, and we were talking about how amazing it was that we were able to do this now. And so, that's one benefit.
That's awesome. I think another thing too that could be really helpful is if you're having issues with mood when your body is readjusting, adaptogens are a great thing to explore too.
Absolutely. Oh, there's so many things out there that we can supplement, so many herbal supplements and meditation practices and fresh air, getting out and taking a walk. I mean, all of these things can help boost mood. So you may want to do a little research ahead of time and have some things at the ready just in case you have some of these effects.
It's all about the balance. Thanks for coming on today. I always enjoy talking with you, and it's just, it's just really wonderful to kind of see us moving into this new space of just really having some really open and mature conversations about our bodies and balance and how it all comes into play. And it's not all just about cannabis, and it can still be a part of our lives, but that mindfulness is just, it's such an important thing that also goes into other parts of our life. It's just a constant practice for our balance and health.
Oh, absolutely. And it's, more important now than ever, because there are so many ways to distract ourselves. And there are so many ways to just mindlessly consume, whether that's social media or Netflix or food or cannabis or alcohol or prescription drugs. That's what capitalism is, right? It's figuring out how to mass feed us things so that we don't pay attention. And so that mindfulness, reconnecting to our bodies, I would say, especially for women, we are taught very early on to not connect with our bodies, to view our bodies as kind of these foreign objects that are attached to us in some peripheral way. And that's not healthy. And so I think, especially for women, reconnecting with our bodies and really feeling inside our bodies is something that is very important, especially as we get older. I have much more reverence and joy in my body now than I ever did as a teenager or a 20-something or a 30-something. So it's really an amazing thing to witness.
Yeah. I enjoy life too. I always joke that the older I get, the less neurotic I become.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Like that give a F meter just starts to go down and down and down and down till there's none left. And I love that. Like I am here for it.
For people who want to learn more about this and also follow you on social media, how should they do that?
So you can check out mypersonalplants.com, which is my platform. I post new articles about every other week. They really focus on healthy consumption of cannabis, but also cannabis history and prohibition and kind of how we got here and how drug laws are formed. Spoiler alert, it's not on science. And so if people want to learn more about having healthy relationships with cannabis, they can check that out. And then I'm on all the social medias, just with my name. Instagram is Dr. Amanda Reiman. Facebook is Amanda Reiman. LinkedIn is Amanda Reiman. So feel free to look me up and to connect.
Thank you so much. Always good to see you, my friend. And I look forward to more conversations as all of this progresses and grows.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And everyone, remember, if you like listening, please give us a review, share it with a friend. Let us know what your favorite episodes are. And if you'd like to stay in touch over social media, we are Planted with Sara Pion on Facebook and Planted with Sara on Instagram and Twitter. You can also go to our website, www.plantedwithsara.com, or listen to us on our parent network, Radio Misfits Network, where there are other great podcasts, like one of my favorites, the Winemakers Podcast. So check it out. You can listen to Planted wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, whether that's Pandora, Spotify, Amazon, Google, Apple, Stitcher. Tune in. We are there. So join us. And until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, it's a wild world out there. Be good to one another. Until next time, take care.